Okay, everybody ready? Have their mics turned on?
Well, I did have it on, yes.
All right, hello, we have 3 public hearings here tonight, and then that'll go into the regular plan commission meeting. During the public hearings, the applicants will give a presentation, and at that point, we will open up the public comment. While public comment is happening, if you have any questions, ask your question. We cannot respond right then and there, but we will write down your questions and respond after a few of the questions are asked. And then we will eventually close that portion of the public hearing and go to the next. So, it's 6:32. Start off with a roll call, please.
President Osterman,
Here.
trustee Plotecker,
Here,
trustee Moonen on Zoom.
Present.
Commissioner Mouche is absent and excused. Commissioner Everly,
Here.
Commissioner Howard is absent and excused. Commissioner McCormick,
Here.
Planner Sumwalt,
Here.
Attorney Macy, Engineer Lysis,
Here.
Administrator Nicholas, and Clerk Capazzo Catch to record the minutes.
Thank you. All right, notice was given that joint public hearings would be held by the Lisbon Village Board and Plan Commission on Wednesday, September 27th, 2023, starting at 6:30 PM at the Richard Young Memorial Fire Station, North 54 West 26455 Lisbon Road. To solicit public comments on the following, we have public hearing number 1, a request by applicants Joseph and Shannon Naruski for amendments to the Lisbon zoning code, in particular but not limited to section 4, parent H 16.a.i to add pet grooming as an example of a limited family business or service-oriented business. Now, Orin, are you starting out or is the applicant?
I can start out.
The 3 dots.
Yeah, there we go. So, as you stated, the request by the Naruskis is a text amendment to add the language pet grooming to the limited family business or service-oriented business category in the code. This is something that would not just impact their specific property. This would create the potentiality of this use anywhere that specific use is allowed. So the current code has pet grooming for commercial purposes only allowed under the definition of an animal boarding place / commercial kennel. The definitions of those are provided in both staff review. The Naruski's property is zoned R2, single family residential district. Animal hospitals, veterinary clinics, and commercial kennels, which include grooming in their definitions, are allowed as a conditional use in the R2 per section 17D12 of the ordinance. However, according to the specific standards for animal hospitals, veterinary clinics, commercial kennels, a commercial kennel operation shall not be permitted on parcels of less than 3 acres and 300 feet of minimum average width. So again, that definition of commercial kennel includes pet grooming. So it is a potential use in the R2, but you would have to meet the specific conditional use standard of having 3 acres and 300 feet of minimum average width. So the Naruski's property is only 0.76 acres with approximately 174.9 feet of width. And as such, they would not be able to operate a pet grooming business from their property under the current definition of a commercial kennel. So they've applied for the text amendment as was already stated. They're looking to, under the explanation of a limited family business or service-oriented business, add the term pet grooming to some of the examples that are listed. And I just have in here to note that a limited family business or service-oriented business is subject to lots of specific conditional use standards per section 4H 16B. Roman numeral 1 through 12, which is included in both staff review. So any limited family business or service-oriented business would be subject to meeting all of these standards. So the Plan Commission should determine whether they find the proposed text amendment to be appropriate. And there is just a boilerplate condition regarding reimbursement of fees listed as well in the staff review. The petitioners are here. If there's any questions from the Plan Commission.
Basically what we're just looking for is washing, nail care, just general principle, they're just general.
You want to go up to the mic, please?
Yeah.
Mitch, can you turn the mic on, please?
Yes.
Can you just state your name and address, too,
Oh,
please?
Shannon and Joe Naruski, W277 and 4865 Lindale Lane, Pewaukee, Wisconsin. I'm sorry, so go ahead.
Just basically general nail care, nail trimming, bath.
Haircut.
Haircut.
Mhm.
Just general
Yes,
principles like
yeah.
that. Okay, fair enough. We do you, in your projections, how many on a weekend, on a muddy weekend like today, on a weekend, what would you project that you would have, how many people coming through, do you think?
I would probably have 4 to 6 dogs a day, not working every day.
Okay.
I'm a stay-at-home mom, so this is a part-time thing, so it'd be maybe 2 times a week.
No, that's good. Yeah, just looking, okay, fair enough.
I just want to interject that the proposal before the Plan Commission doesn't include an actual conditional use permit request, so that we don't have any details about what the operation might be at this time. This is just contemplating amending the code to create the opportunity for them to apply
Right,
in the
and I just
future.
wanted to, so going forward, and that's a valid point, I just wanted to get, so we have a framework
Yep.
of what, and how it does, so it fits, which it, that it fits everything here, that's just so we have it, we're not, have to come back here. Good.
Are you done, Sean?
Yes, I'm-
Sorry, I didn't interrupt. Do you believe that you meet all the requirements for a limited family business or a service oriented business that are stated in here?
Yes, I do. I didn't have I filled out the application, but didn't propose it yet until we heard back from today. But I did go through the standards and had a statement for each of them.
And the only other question, this is more of a CUP question when you get to that point. Were you planning on any boarding at all?
No boarding.
Joe, hang on one second. I'm gonna have John just explain something,
Yeah,
just because we're in a, since we're in a text, talking about text amendment, not so much the actual CU here.
Yeah, just be reminded that conditional uses are quasi judicial and we're only supposed to talk about the specifics of the conditional use at a public hearing. Because the public hasn't been notified, and so you're asking questions that they're not going to be privy to. So what we should be talking about is whether it's appropriate or not. And I understand your explanation from the prior commissioner that it wants to make sure that it accomplishes what they're trying to accomplish. But we really shouldn't be going into the detail, and that's what Oren tried to say, and now I'm reiterating. And it's only because the legislature made CUs quasi judicial, we have to be sensitive to that fact.
okay.
Understood, I just want to make sure it's for everybody's purpose here, that it's efficient, that we don't have to come back and make sure that, that all these 12 conditions, everything's together, so.
I understand. And I didn't stop you, but we can't go into it any further without the public hearing.
Understood.
That makes sense?
It has to be spoken about in general terms,
Oh, yeah.
not specifics.
Because this applies to everybody in the village. Now, they're the petitioners, so you can ask, whether they thought about whether, but anyway, and Oren can.
Then the only other question I have, and if I am out of line, I expect to be stopped, but the question is, does the word grooming cover? Is it adequate for what you want to do? Because it has to do with this, because that's the only word that we're talking about, discussing changing as far as the text amendment and not being in the, I just want to make sure that you're
Yeah.
comfortable
Yes, this is just for the services provided to the
No other questions, Mr. Chairman.
I have no questions.
So with this text amendment, you're not looking to change the text in any way, shape or form to reflect on kenneling dogs or holding multiple dogs. You're just talking about, you would like the code to reflect now that somebody would bring a dog to a limited family business. The dog would be groomed at that point and then released back to the owner, not stored on site, nothing like that.
Correct. There could be, just for transparency, there could be a brief holding time while the person comes back to get their dog, but not a kenneling, boarding, doggy daycare, anything like that.
None.
At this point, then we'll open it up for public comment. But right now, we'll ask the public to have any comment. Do you have anything else you want to?
I just have one comment where I know it's covered in the commercial kenneling or commercial, I think it's commercial kennels. But the difference of what we're asking for is more like a home scale, not necessarily what you would think of as a commercial kennel. I guess is what the purpose of providing the text
But
amendment
just
request
the
was for.
grooming portion.
Yes, yep,
Right,
exactly,
just to be clear, you're just asking to change the grooming.
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
you wanna have a seat and we'll ask them, see if anybody wants to ask any questions and. Is there anyone here for this public hearing? Zoom?
If anyone on Zoom has comments for this public hearing, please use the raise hand function. Nope, just staff.
Is there any, at that point, I guess, is there any other questions from the commission? Do you have any?
I just have one because, and maybe this is, I'm getting overly anal in my advanced age. But the public hearing notice on the front page says to add pet grooming. The text amendment that was drafted as part of the planner's review only has the word grooming in it. And maybe it doesn't matter, but I just want to make sure we don't run into an issue.
If you look at page 2 of the staff review. That's where the actual code section, 4H16A,
Oh, okay,
Roman numeral
Okay.
1, which has in red the pet grooming.
okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, the other two portions are just the existing definitions in the code that include grooming.
I just want to make sure that. we don't get-
And the final page of your packet materials for this as well does have a draft ordinance that will be what the village board will look at, assuming that there is a plan commission recommendation for the board to consider it.
Thank you.
Definition of pet grooming in here?
No, yeah, the code doesn't currently have a definition.
That's something we should be looking at. I mean, I hate to say this is an example, but all of a sudden we've got a illegal pet being groomed. Not this place. This isn't gonna happen here, but I mean, it's just,
We can
this is
add
something
it.
we should add at some.
I agree with
add
you, Mr.
Change.
I
Chairman.
don't need an elephant to show up at somebody's house and live with them and say, we've been grooming them for 6 months,
Or a giraffe.
right?
We
I mean,
can
it
add
sounds silly, but
Yeah, we can add it during our code changes.
because we're referencing something that doesn't necessarily have a reference. If
just-
you want to speak, I'm just gonna have you come up to the mic because we're on Zoom.
I know for our specific requests, I believe we're just requesting for dogs. If
Sure,
it had to be
but-
that specific,
In our code.
Yeah.
Because you're asking for a text amendment.
correct?
This literally affects everywhere in
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
entire village.
I mean, if we wanted to be more like most specific as possible,
Sure.
we could even dog instead of pet, since pet could be.
And if we put a
anything.
pet grooming definition and it also has the pet grooming anywhere else that's used, like in a commercial setting or
Sure.
anything else, so. I'm sure other communities have this, we can look at and get that handled. Like I said, I don't want to be silly about it, but
Some people have differing ideas of what pets are.
Exactly. Awesome, thank you.
all right, is there any information to add to this public hearing? As we won't be able to add any new information after we close this public hearing? Nothing, Sean, nothing?
All the questions here are pretty much satisfied, Mr. Chairman.
Joe?
None.
If we wanted to get into the minuati of exotic animals.
I guess the only concern I have about along the Petaluma R2 district or any district for that matter, residential district is the noise from the noise. As Bart, like I've said, they're in a confined area, something new. We just don't need a bunch of complaints from the neighbors. And that's my only concern. Otherwise, I have no issues with Petaluma being in the residential area. Bothersome to the neighbors. That's all.
Becky,
I don't have anything.
anything further from staff? No?
Nope.
Anything further from the applicant?
But to your point, in dealing with two muddy border collies that just wallowing in lake mud. And then getting basically, there is a muzzle or they're muzzled and for safety or whatnot, and for the barking or whatever, they're just like, okay, whatever. So usually a barking and carrying on, usually in grooming, they're like over 8, just like a kid sitting in a barber chair.
Any comments from the public? Last call on that. Still nothing else on Zoom.
Correct.
This public hearing at 6:48. Move on to the second public hearing number 2, a request by applicants Paul and Nancy Mullen for a conditional use permit to allow major grading activities in the A10 agricultural zoning district on the property located at 158 West 26215 Mount Kettle Drive, Philip PT 0260.999.004. Whoever would like to start this one out.
I can start this one off. So the property owners are requesting approval of a major grading permit to bring in clean fill in association with the preparation of an area with a relatively high groundwater level for the future construction of a single-family residence with a basement at North 58 West 26215 Mountain Shadow Drive. So this is an approximately 11.51 acre property. They would be bringing in more fill than would typically be allowed, which is what's necessitating the public hearing for a major grading permit. The property is zoned A10 currently. And essentially this is a site for a new home for the Mullins. There is a existing house on this property. So, in the future, in order to build that home, they would need to do a CSM to split the property. They would need to rezone so that they could do 5 acre lots, because currently, again, it's zoned A10, which has a minimum 10 acre lot requirement. So I think the intent of the Mullins is that they'd like to be able to get filled during the construction season while it's available to prep this site. They have done, and I believe it's included in the packet, some engineering work to determine that they could basically, have a home with a foundation, given the limitations of the soils there, that could be overcome. So that report is in the packet. Reason I mentioned that is that the specific area of the property that they're interested in doing this has the future land use designation of, other open lands to be preserved, which, as we know from other discussions and other meetings, means that there's some kind of limitation there to be overcome, whether it's wetlands or, poor soils or whatever it happens to be. In this case, it is the soils, and they've done the due diligence prior to our meeting here. So we've got some recommendations in here because it's uncharacteristic for us to approve something like this in anticipation of something. Typically a request like this would be accompanied by additional information. As I mentioned, the rezoning application, a certified survey map, some detailed plans, plat of survey, things like that. So we've got some conditions in here. Number 1, limiting this to Mullins tax parcel number. Number 2, basically stating that they're gonna bring in clean fill in association with the preparation of an area with a relatively high groundwater level for future construction of a single-family residence with a basement. In accordance with plans, documents, and specifications presented this evening to the Plan Commission. Since the home building portion of this project isn't imminent, that this approval expire on December 31st, 2024. The reason for that condition is we don't want this to just be an open-ended approval to bring in fill in perpetuity, that there be a cutoff date. I see nodding of heads. That the petitioner may request a new public hearing for an extension so long as it is accompanied by a certified survey map, site plan identifying the home location and site access and details regarding the terminus of Indian Head Drive. And then we've got our normal boilerplate conditions that are included in all of our major grading conditional use permits. The petitioners are here. If there's any questions from the Plan Commission for them.
I have a question, from the applicant or for the applicant. How many yards are you talking about, cubic yards?
It's on here or not.
I didn't find it on there unless I missed it.
I think, Mitch, you asked about this and the math, we were doing the math, right?
State your name and address. too.
I'm sorry, Paul Mullen, N58 26215 Mount Shadows Drive.
So Joe, that was one of my concerns too. Just the amount of fill that would be needed for this area. If you look at that, proposed contours that they have.
Yeah.
So their total disturbed area is under an acre, but if you take half of that area that they're looking at potentially disturbing, figure on average, like maybe 3 feet throughout the site, you're around 150 truckloads of cubic, so if you figure 15 cubic yards, a truck roughly, you're at about 150 truckloads of material that would have to come in there to fill that site. So I think, and I'm stating truckloads because I think that's kind of what everybody might want to know of how many vehicles might be going up and down some of those residential streets.
The other question I have for planner is, just so I understand this, one scenario would be that what we're really looking at is to add fill to an existing property. And that's the end of it. Nothing ever, I mean, there's no guarantee that anybody's gonna do anything other than build a pile of dirt. I just don't. I'm concerned about getting into the scenario where it's assumed that all the other requisite requirements in order to build a house, as they're stating, are a fait accompli. I mean, they still gotta go through that whole process, and at any point along that process, there's a possibility of a denial. I don't want them or the village to assume that if they're granted this major grading permit, that they're gonna be able to build a house there. I don't wanna get us trapped into a corner. And I just would feel more comfortable if we wanted to put into the record that there's no guarantee that they'll ever be granted any of the other permitting to build a house there without going through the process.
Basically, this is a standalone CUP for major grading, not a.
Right.
Well, I think in response to Commissioner Everly's concern, that's why we included the language in condition number 4, that essentially after this approval, if they wanted to extend it, then at that point, we would want to make sure that a reapproval was accompanied by, or an extension was accompanied by all of those things that would be necessary for the project itself, for the building of the home.
Actually, item 4 is one thing I want to bring up. So what if, I mean, this is assuming they're gonna build a second home and do a CSM and split it. What if they decided to just take down the existing house, extend the driveway up to this pad?
Then they
Then
wouldn't,
item 4 is kind of, but item 4 is gonna restrict that. Because item 4 states, so long as the company by a certified survey map and site plan identifying the home location and site access and details regarding a terminus of Indian Head. Well, they wouldn't be required to terminate Indian Head in that
Right.
scenario,
That's correct. You wouldn't have to.
true,
because I believe that is a potential option.
it is.
So I would. not-
But another option would also be that they get a different CU.
Yeah, but
They just
in here
apply
it's-
for a different CU without these parameters.
My concern is, to me, this is a request for a grading permit to add fill to an existing lot. Period. It is nothing to be read into this, that this is any guarantee that they will ever be permitted to build a house there or put a new extension in there for a driveway off of Indian Head, anything. I just don't want us to get trapped in a corner where we have to, even going through a public hearing or anything else, somebody would say, not saying that you would, but say, look, all the wording in here and all the conditions are based upon building a new house at this location where the grading is being done. I just don't want us to get trapped in that. I mean, I hope to God it never happens, but I've seen stranger things happen in my life.
Well, this isn't strange. The chairman asked whether we need to be concerned about that, and the answer to that is yes. They sold it to somebody else and the comp plan, rezoning, all the things that need CSM aren't approved. And they go to court and say, well, judge, why did they let us bring in 100 truckloads of fill if they're not going to let us build what they weren't wanting to let us build a house?
Exactly.
So you're right on that needs to be part of the record. They've made the decision to do this prior to any of the other approvals, and so they're proceeding, as we tell many people, at their own risk.
Chairman?
What would
on-
be an appropriate inclusion in the conditions that would clearly in black and white make that statement? That they are in fact, I mean, if there's no guarantee whatsoever that they're ever gonna be granted rest of the permits to build a house or.
So if we remove anything about a single family residence in number 2, in number 4, the petition may request a new public hearing for an extension period. Those things, if we took out anything to do with a single family residence in number 2, and then we took the chairman's concerned about the if they just make a decision not to do a certified survey map or a site plan, that we just say that they can come in for an extension, another public hearing for an extension. It doesn't require them to have a certified survey map, a site plan.
I guess what I'm hearing is if, on Joe's end, is we list the home in the conditions, he's worried that we're approving it. And if I'm hearing right on John's end, if we don't say this is what the conditions would be, somebody could come back and say, well, why else do you think we were doing this? Am I correct?
You're correct, but to respond to the administrator's recommendation, unfortunately, the horse is out of the barn. The record is already there, that what they contemplate doing and all of that, and we can't take that away. Mr. Everly's just trying to say, what could we say? Whether we remove that or not, Mr. Everly's concern needs to be addressed. Is my response. You can't undo the fact that they set forth all of this information that they're doing this with the potentiality, and I use that word deliberately, building the house. So to Mr. Everly's point, and the staff can work up the exact language, it's pretty much what you just said. There is no assurance that they will be granted the necessary approvals to build the house. Or and if they are, what those conditions would be. So I think you've stated it twice in a ways that the planner and the clerk who work on the final drafts you know, can work some language into that extent.
What could we just, with
See you.
three, since the whole building portion of this project isn't eminent and it has received no approvals from the village?
No, because it doesn't say that they are put on notice that those, you know, you're saying that, but you don't say that they can't rely on this to get those approvals. That language will help them, would help them against the judge, not hurt, would hurt us, put it that way.
So what language is gonna accomplish all this?
Well, I stated, unless you wanted to work it up right now, it's the petitioner is hereby put on notice that you know, there's no assurance or guarantee that they will receive any of the approvals to build the house, including, and then you have your laundry list of what they need. You know, and, you know, they're proceeding at their own risk. As I said, I have no problem. I'm saying it a third way. Mr. Everly said it twice. We can work up some language to incorporate that concern. Does that make sense?
I'm fine with that. There's a couple of other, excuse me, conditions I'd like to add to this, but we can deal with that after the public hearing when this item gets to the agenda.
Well, if there's gonna be discussion, we should bring them up. I mean, the
Okay.
administrator and I talked about with 100 loads. Some communities require that the roads be videotaped. Is that what you're gonna bring up?
Yes,
Well,
yes.
we should talk about that because one of the reasons you talk about it is because if there are people in the audience who want to speak on this, they'll know what some of your concerns are.
Okay.
And so we shouldn't talk about it after we close the public hearing.
Okay, then I will, if Chairman, I am of the strong opinion that the hall route from through this subdivision to this site be restricted to one street and that be monitored. The second item would be that that route be videotaped by the village. And if the applicant wants to be there when the videotape is done before any work is done, so we have a record of what condition that street is in before, that we videotape it after they complete it, the hauling in of this fill. And thirdly, that they, in some methodology, approved by the village attorney, that we get some type of a road bond to protect the village if there's damage to that road from this hauling, that the village is made whole. And I would say that the amount of that bond should be set by the Director of Public Works and the village engineer. We've seen this happen before, and especially if this is allowed, I mean, today's a great example. I mean, we had 3 inches of rain the last 2 days at our house down the street. And it's gonna take a toll on those roads, and that road, Indian Head, is not in that great a shape. So that's why I like to have the 3 conditions in there.
I know, I was just looking at this with just looking at Indian Head and Mountain Shadows, because, you know, the only other thing, and I'll just add for everybody, that October Fields might be ongoing at the same time, so you have traffic to the north of that, plus, you know, funneling in here off Walnut and Mary Hill. So there's gonna be a little bit, there's gonna be a lot more stress on Mary Hill with this addition.
I don't have anything, Chairman. I apologize because I was not there at the staff meeting. I just wanted to ask I see in the drawing that there's something to help with the mud coming off. Is that correct? Is that what that black on the
Gotta put a bunch of stone there. You have to come up to the mic though, I'm sorry. We're on Zoom here, so anyone on Zoom won't be able to hear you if you're not up.
Essentially, that we would be putting in stone there to protect the culvert, the entrance in and out, to reduce the amount of mud that could potentially be tracked in and out. There's a whole sort of erosion control, that's a part of it.
and so So, will our DPW have some kind of agreement with them on if there's mud on the road? I mean, if they came tomorrow and started dumping, we were gonna have lumps of dirt on that road.
So we would have to do probably some inspections periodically on the site. We'd have to respond to any neighboring complaints. But we would hope that if they're going to be bringing fill in there, they're gonna need the proper equipment to spread the soils, to compact those soils. And you would hope that they would have some type of a street sweeper or a sweeper on the front of a skid loader of some sort that they could use to clean the roadways off, because that is an issue. That's, they have best management practices in place. That's a tracking pad. That's a typical DNR standard that is represented within their plans, along with the silt fence that's bordering around the disturbed area. So
Mitch, as far as restrictions, if, you know, we're bringing in a lot of dump trucks here. Will the road be able to handle the weight of these trucks?
I haven't been out there to take a look at what's there at this point. What Joe had mentioned with regards to video logging the roadways, we've done that many times before. Just we could do it right on our phones and do a narrative as we walk the street to identify any things that are existing. And then we can compare that in the future again. So I think that's a good recommendation.
And I'd like to avoid, I mean, if the road is in poor repair in areas where it doesn't matter what, you know, like if the truck's gonna go over it and it's gonna damage it.
Sure,
They don't wanna pay $1 million for road repair,
understood.
so.
If we
just would like to
identify,
Identify that. right
yeah,
off the bat.
we would absolutely do that. Yep.
So I
Mitch.
think this road, we've done more than a couple times, we've done the chip seal over it.
Yeah.
And that won't take any loading at all. That's,
No, chip
Window
seal is
dressing.
not, it's,
one of the concerns I have is just looking at the aerial of that area. There's a number of ways that dirt can get to this site. And I want to restrict it to one, because if we can come in off of Mary Hill, you can come in off of,
I don't think you can come in off Mary Hill.
well, there's nothing in there that says they couldn't build a haul road off of Mary Hill.
I think our best plan of attack would be to work with our DPW director, myself. We can review the different ways, different haul routes to access their property and come up with a game plan of what we would restrict them to.
Right. I mean, it's more work, but at the end of the day, when something happens and people are not gonna like 150 trucks going down the road, no matter what we did, if they were. I've been through this too many times. We need to restrict, I mean, there's no clear shot to that site without 2 or 3 streets being used. And I want to restrict it to those 2 or 3 streets so that we know what it is. And we can assess the damage, if any, to any of those roads.
Sure.
I was just kind of looking at an extended map here and I'm just looking into that subdivision. And correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong, but it only looks like the only access off a major road. We're looking at Mountain Shadows and it's kind of a rolling, you know, kind of going through. I was just kind of looking at my phone here.
We'll work on a path.
Pardon me?
There's a minimum of 3 streets that have to be used to get to the site, so. I want to restrict it to, I'm looking at the map right here. So.
I have a
comment. Trucks all the way through Mountain Shadows on every possible street, up and down those hills.
Mhm.
And then we've got an absolute cluster.
And you know truck drivers, right?
Yes, exactly.
So,
Mitch,
yes,
the edge of the road of the temporary cul-de-sac that they're going to be putting their driveway through, or where this path is gonna go through
Mhm.
for these dump trucks. Are we concerned that the edge is going to
break off.
break off?
I'm sure that it would, more than likely, it probably will with that amount of trucks coming in and out. You can, if they would carry their tracking pad out to the pavement itself and over the edge of that pavement, that'll provide a little bit of structure to help maybe alleviate that issue. But we'll see, and as things start developing out there, we can definitely take a look and give them recommendations as it goes.
Thank you.
I have a comment, 2 comments for the hearing when you're ready. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to voice concern about is I thought about trucking hours, seeing this as a heavily residential subdivision, along with the proximity to a school. I would also like to see if we could restrict the hours of trucking so that it doesn't interfere with the safety of children utilizing bus routes during that time. Secondly, I have the idea that if this is going to be open through the entire calendar year of 24, we should also include the potentiality that there is a restriction on the road for spring thaw, and they would have to abide by that condition.
There, I mean, the normal load limits within the village would pertain to this anyway, but it wouldn't hurt to put it in as a condition, even though it is what it is. I mean, there's load limits that are imposed by the village and they'd have to comply with those anyway. But I mean, what Mark is saying is absolutely correct.
Yeah, I just
Channels.
also another thing I had with the time was, I would have a concern if we're talking 150 truckloads, if they were trying to do that in one day. I think that'd be a unnecessary disruption to that neighborhood.
I'm more concerned that it's gonna take 365 days that they're gonna be doing it. I'd rather have it done, quite frankly, the shorter period of time than the longer period of time, so that the people don't have to put up with this any longer than they have to.
Had some questions from our petition here.
There you go.
Doesn't like me. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little distracting. So at this time, we'll open up to the public. Does anyone here that wishes to speak on this public hearing?
Why don't I start? We have actually most of the neighbors who are in the 4 homes that are right around, again, Paul Mullen, that are here. The comments from the planning commission around the out of orderness of this, or the incompleteness of, that doesn't include the CSM and all the other pieces. I think some context will be helpful in evaluating the wisdom of that. We started this process, if you look at the application, at the end of last year, made our formal application in February, and then ran into some discussions, which I know have come before this council or this group of people before, regarding what the terminus at the end of Indian Head Drive would look like. We, of course, have learned that that's going to take some time to resolve. I think you're going to probably hear from some of our neighbors about their preferences around that. But we had applied back in the winter with the idea that we could then take advantage of the construction season and do this in an orderly fashion. I think as the dialogue has continued around the eventual disposition of the terminus of Indian Head Drive, it's taken so long that for Nancy and I, we just said, well, can we at least get started to do some of the preparations as we go? So that is the reason that it feels incomplete or out of order. It is really, it's a pragmatic matter. We do understand our obligations in this. We've been quite transparent with our neighbors about what we're trying to do, and they of course have opinions about what makes a lot of sense here. But I didn't want the discussion earlier about, gosh, you're looking for fill without having all the other pieces in place. I didn't want that to pass without the context of it. Does that make sense? Okay.
Sure, come on up, speak. Just want to remind everybody here, we are here to talk about a major grading permit tonight. There's context which I believe helped this, but we
Yeah.
want to limit it to that.
Okay, well, I'm Lou Chrisberg. I live at N 59 W 26251 Indian Head. So that would be till Paul builds, I'm the last house on the right of Indian Head, right next to the property which he intends to build on. And my comments, I mean, I agree with the concerns that you're addressing about the traffic for these, 100+ dump trucks and so forth. And I assume you're presupposing when you say that a minimum of 3 roads would have to be used, you're presupposing that Indian Head would be the entry point. Am I correct? Because Mountain Shadows is 1 road which would go straight in.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's,
Joe? We gotta be real careful on our back
Yes.
and forth. So you can ask a question. We're not supposed to have back and forth on this at this time. So just state what your question is. And I know it's a little bit cumbersome, but
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure I understood that for the purpose of discussion.
sure.
Okay, so yes, if Indian Head is the entry point for the dumping, then a minimum of 3 roads in the subdivision do have to be used. The other thing is not directly related to that, but it's related to the termination of Indian Head, which you've talked about a couple of times. And I notice on your map there, you show it just as a direct road into that property, when in reality, there's a turnaround there. And so my comments have to do with that. Speaking for myself, and I think for my neighbors, but they can speak for themselves. We want to make sure, if at all possible, that turnaround
So
stays.
we will not be
In
able to
place.
discuss what you are talking about tonight, just so you know.
Okay, but I
Here-
want to go on record as saying that,
Okay,
whether you discuss it or not.
J-
Okay,
we just can't talk about it. just so you know.
understand,
Okay.
understand.
This is,
So that's my point. So, as far as the other proposal, which I have seen, and Paul and Nancy have been very good at keeping us informed, and we appreciate that very much, where they had a picture of a T termination. That, to me anyway, that looks like an idea that is not going to be very functional or sustainable when you start talking about the trucks, the septic trucks, the delivery trucks, the trailers, and all the other ones that currently use that turnaround and use it pretty effectively with little to no impact on the neighborhood. So I just want to go on record as saying we're looking very closely to see what happens to that turnaround on Indian Head. And we're very interested to see how that gets resolved or decided upon. Okay, thank you for letting me
Thank you.
talk. Appreciate it.
Does anyone else wish to speak?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Craig Koenig. I live at N 59 W 26250. You guys opened the door when you brought up the terminus as part of the conditions of whatever. Condition number 4 is what you guys kept referring to it as. That terminus, it would be a negative impact to our community. I have a Ring doorbell that records at least 30 cars every day turning around there. I live on the north side of the road. Every single commercial vehicle that comes down there, every UPS truck, the mail truck, every Amazon delivery will use my driveway to turn around. I personally do not have the money to support maintaining a driveway at a Class A road standard to support that. That turnaround is vital to the end of that road. I'm letting you know right now, I will be against that 100%.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
Joe Hine, N59 W26287. I mimic their statements. I'd just like to say, as far as the trucking goes, it's not, to me, I don't see it as much of a concern. Doing some dummy math here, 150 trucks is about 6,000 cubic yards. In an organized grading effort, that's about 4 to 5 days of work. So to me, that's a pretty minimal effort in order to get to the point where we can start talking about what Lou is talking about with the terminus. So I just want to bring that up, that, you know, if the plan is for a major grading effort, that's, I guess in the grand scheme of things, not really that major, in my opinion.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak?
I have a question if there aren't other people who want to speak.
Sure. Is anyone on Zoom wants to speak?
All staff on Zoom.
Come on up, Paul.
Yeah, I'm doing this sort of ad hoc, but it was stimulated by somebody talked about a haul road. Who's, was that usually?
Use that word.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a, I don't actually know technically what that means, but there is a, at the very, first of all, thanks for thinking through this, but here's something that maybe between Warren and Mitch and us we could look at. And again, I'm thinking about how we might mitigate the traffic as it relates to hauling stuff between Indian Head and Mountain Shadows. There is a strip of land that is roughly parallel to Catesburg Drive. I don't know if you can see that where you're looking. Yeah, there you go. Somebody just highlighted it, whoever that was. Thank you. I don't exactly understand the ownership of that property, but it is neither on our property nor on the property of the people just to the north. Lisbon Land Department or Partnership.
John Spitz.
So that's a private owner.
Yes.
Okay. The question I was going to raise is whether that access through Catesburg might be some sort of temporary approach. Okay, thank you. Just something to
And you're the applicant, so we can have a back and forth
Oh,
with you.
oh, you can't.
With you, correct.
Okay.
But it's, but the public hearing comments, that is a, ask the question, we respond kind of thing, so.
Okay. In any case, that was the question that,
Okay.
that as a possibility, I don't even know what the possibility is there.
Okay. We've had quite a bit more on this than I thought there was gonna be. Where to go, Aaron?
Well, the question that needs to be made of the commissioners is whether or not they wish to close the public hearing or direct staff to prepare a modified document pursuant to your comments and bring it back. If you're going to bring the document back, which is a total policy decision, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't when they get this complicated. But if you are going to bring it back, you should adjourn the public hearing so that we can get additional input from the petitioner and others if they have comments on the wording.
I think time is a factor in this.
I have no idea.
I was just gonna bring up before we close the public hearing, if we wanted to discuss what particular hours of operation would be applied. I have a note from Mr. Moonen of adding a restriction for hours of operation for the hauling, but we didn't specifically talk about what those hours would be.
Sure. Mark, did you have an idea what you wanted those to be?
Oop,
So
you
there-
got me?
Yep.
Yeah, I would just, I guess it would take a little more research on the staff's part to find out what the bus schedule is. And, obviously during the summer, it's not a conflict, but during the regular school year, it would be. And I guess that would be my only wish. It would probably only be maybe an hour or two in the morning and an hour or two during, the let out of school. So I can't, give a specific time at this point.
I think we'd be safe if we said, without looking at it, everybody's been is on the bus by 9 o'clock in the morning. And everybody is, coming back from school no earlier than, well, I don't know, they come back at noon too for the pre-kindergartners, but the, normally 9 to 2 would be probably the time where we have the least amount of kids on that road.
And I guess my question to that would be, do we do this anywhere else? Not that we're establishing something new.
Do not, well, no, we don't.
I mean, it's a valid concern, I think, but
Mhm.
I just want to make sure we're not doing something here that we wouldn't do anywhere else.
We have not done this anywhere else. For a major grading permit, require hours of operation for any trucking.
Should have any thoughts on that?
I think this is different than the usual grading permit. Most grading permits that I have seen are in non-residential areas. Or they're adjacent to we're not running through a subdivision that I've seen that I recall. I could be wrong, wouldn't be the first time. But I think this one differs from the fact that in order to get on a public street to this site requires quite a lengthy travel route from a county trunk highway. And if this was going to happen, it's within a week, you could put 6,000 yards on there in a week. There's no question about that. I'm more concerned about this is gonna happen over 12 months and it,
Applicant,
fine.
what's your timetable? Come on up.
I mean, do you have a contract for dirt?
No, we've been waiting for approval to do
I
this. And
understand.
right, so, no, exactly, we've been, waiting for that. We want to be as expeditious as possible. The context here may not bear on your decisions, but here's our mental model of how this works. We would like to begin the physical construction of the home as soon as the weather permits in the spring. And then we would like to have it closed, not finished, not completed, but at least the external envelope of it closed before the snow flies again in the fall. And we are making pretty significant investments in other non-disturbance kinds of ways. We're doing most of the work ourselves, subject to permitting and licensure and all the other things that you could insert here. And we are looking then to make sure that we route traffic, time, noise, all those other things. And we've discussed it with our neighbors at some level. So our goal is to be as expeditious as possible with a goal of completing it between snow and snow in the summer of next year. And then there would be inside work that follows that, if that makes any sense. And that, of course, is subject to an expeditious process here and the rest of the approvals.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask one more question, the applicant.
Sure.
Would you be opposed to have a problem with, right now, we say that this, if issued, would be between now and the end of 2024. If we said you got 5 months to do this, it would actually be beneficial. It sounds like it would meet your timetable. It's also better for the roads to do it as opposed, we're not gonna do it in spring because there's gonna be load limits on there.
Yeah, from our perspective, my initial reaction to that is actually quite positive. I agree with you. We would be on the same side of the table in terms of the goals, both for the neighborhood and for our own project.
Right.
The challenge here is that we started this process back in February with the hope that we could have, in fact, done it all during the summer and be done. Because of the process, we're now here in October, almost. And the question, of course, is whether a 5-month period is executable, given the length of the current construction season. But yes, we agree with you conceptually.
What's going to happen is that there's going to be, you're working on this schedule and it's working to the fact that load limits are gonna come on in the spring, you're not gonna be able to do a whole heck of a lot of work because you're not gonna be able to get any weighted trucks in there during the load limits.
Yep.
So you either have to be done in order to meet the schedule you're talking about. If you want to start digging a hole in the spring, you're not gonna be digging that hole much before the 1st of May with load limits. So if you don't get this done by the end of February, your schedule just,
We're aware of that.
yeah. I
The
mean,
one
you're-
thing that we have is patience. As you might have noticed going through the process here, but we want to be as expeditious about this as possible.
If this was answered, I apologize. but
Sure.
How do we come up with 150 truckloads? I just did some quick math.
Yeah.
Because according to your profile, it says 800 cubic yards. You've got approximately 11 feet of fill.
Yeah, this, the drawing you're looking at, right, was, yeah, the drawing you're looking at is an informal one. I did
Okay.
the one that, Mitch is responding to. Here's one done by an engineering firm.
Okay, well, I'm gonna, no offense, but I'm probably.
Yeah, that's a much better idea. Yeah.
Okay, no
I'm an
problem.
electrical engineer, not a
No
civil
problem.
engineer.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
that answers, I get it. Because there's about 11 feet of fill, correct?
There are, but you gotta consider the footprint of the building, you know, blending of the material to the existing grades. So I am probably to be honest, I'm probably falling in the middle of where it might end up.
You may have to take 3 or 4 feet out of there to begin with.
And you don't know the footprint of the building yet.
We do. We have a candidate design. It's pending decisions here and a few other things, right?
Okay, no, that answers my question.
Yeah,
I
sure.
understand.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mitch.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, but in general, we want to be expeditious, as you can tell. We've been communicating with our neighbors. We want to be quite sensitive to them and the others, and we're going to do a lot of work to make sure we keep the noise down and the dust down and the mud down and protect the roads. So.
Else? We need to discuss?
I don't have anything else.
No new information brought in. We can figure this out in the agenda item, John?
Yes, except for if your decision is going to bring it back, that means that the public can't speak on the draft when it comes back. That's the only reason. Yes, with the understanding that there will be no more.
Commission, anything else you wish to add? Is everybody okay if we close this public hearing at this time? I mean, it's closed, but.
Right. I have no problem with that. I believe that the information that's presented tonight so far, staff can do their due diligence and write up the appropriate language for the conditions. Without having to come back and do this, and take another month of.
John, you go with that?
I concur with Joe.
Brian?
Yes.
Becky?
Yeah.
Anything staff wishes to add? Anything the applicant wishes to add?
Can I add something?
Can you step up for public comment? Yes, sir. State your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Paul Kukla. I live at N59 W26276 Indian Head. I'm the second house on the north from where the existing 10 acres wants to be developed. My concern is that the cul-de-sac they lived on for 28 years looks like that's going to be eliminated. So will there be, this hearing is basically for Paul Mullins to get the fill for his land. My concern is if you guys are going to affect our subdivision by destroying our cul-de-sac, or if you're going to find another way through there, which would make sense to me to go straight down Mountain Shadows. That would be a straight shot instead of going down Indian Head. But if you decide on Indian Head, will there be another meeting so that we can get more folks from Indian Head to come here and speak on saving that cul-de-sac there or parts of it and just making a driveway through there? Because this doesn't affect
what I'm concerned about. As far as, I'd like to see Mr. Mullins get his land filled and build a home there, then see something else go up there. So I don't know if that's something that you guys can take up so that more concerns of the people in Mountain Shadows can come there and know what's going to be going on with the fill, with the trucks. I've dealt with this with Spitz when he was developing Ironwood, when the roads went through and that stuff. So that was concerning because we dealt with a ton of trucks then. We still do, because there's basically two big subdivisions between two old subdivisions. So where are the trucks going to go? So my concern is to protect where I live and the route Indian Head. Like my neighbor said, it's a turnaround's been there for over 50 years. So to see a driveway go through, that'd be okay. I think agreeable to my neighbors, but to just eliminate that and put in a T or something like that, I don't know. But if you guys schedule something for that would concern more people about the truck travel. That would, I'd like to see something like that for the benefit of everybody in Mountain Shadows. That's it. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other public comment? Close the public hearing at 7:38 for this one. Move on to public hearing number 3. Request by applicant Hans Dawson, Sussex Quarry LSP LLC to amend the area to the existing conditional use permit for quarry in the Q1 quarrying zoning district to include the properties located at North 52 West 23096 Lisbon Road, and identified as tax keys LSBT 0286.999.007 and LSBT 0286.999.008. We'll be starting off tonight on this one.
I can give a brief introduction. So the 2022 Lisbon Sussex Cooperative Boundary Agreement saw several parcels transferred from Lisbon to Sussex and Sussex to Lisbon. 2 of the properties transferred to Lisbon encompass Land and Stone Product Inc.'s Sussex Quarry. The petitioner and property owner are requesting to amend their conditional use permit to basically add these 2 tax parcels to their conditional use. So this amendment will expand the area of the existing CUP to include the real property legally described in their attached Exhibit A, the quote additional land, and these 2 parcels were previously before the Plan Commission for assigning zoning to them. So again, you've seen this before. I've got the property up on the screen here. I'm going to highlight them. So there's 1 parcel which includes their office and access, and then there's another parcel which is the rest of the quarry site.
This is just a housekeeping issue from when we brought the 2 properties over from Lisbon, correct?
It is. So when they got their original CUP, we explicitly excluded the parcels that were in Sussex because we couldn't approve it with those at that time. Now that those are part of the village, it makes sense for them to be under their existing conditional use permit.
Any questions from the commission on this?
None.
Okay, open up for public comment. Anybody here to speak on this item? Anyone on Zoom?
All staff on Zoom.
Okay. Last chance for any questions on this? Nothing on the commission end, and anyone here? Also, we'll then close this at 7:41. Move into the regular plan commission meeting then at 7:41. Item 2 is citizens' comments. Does anyone have anything to speak about under citizens' comments tonight?
I do.
All right, if you'd stand, come up to the mic, speak your name and address, please.
I'm Judy Reinders and my address is W287 and 8379 Dobberton Road in Heartland. And I am here just to express a concern, and so I will hand out these sheets. So we live in the town of Merton and we were looking to change density on a piece of property in the town of Merton, and Village of Lisbon ends up being the extraterritorial village for this property. And so therefore you had review rights to it. And so I guess I just want to point out the concern that we have in the charges that we got for this review. So, you know, we started out doing the density change on this and it was not approved by the town of Merton. However, you did approve it, and so we got the bill for that. So we had to go back and change our plans, and instead of splitting it into 3 1-acre parcels, we had to go with the current zoning, which was 2 parcels. So then we went through the CSM process. And so I guess that I am just here to express my concern that these are really huge charges for a community that we don't live in. And my concern is, you know, if you're doing a review, why do we have to pay Town of Merton to go over all of this work, and the county, and then you as well? So there's like 3 sets of people who are reviewing all of this. So not that anything can be done about it now, but I think for the future, you know, it's a concerning situation that we have to pay the Village of Lisbon twice as much as we do to the town that we live in. Okay. Thank you.
Else wish to speak under citizens' comments? And still staff on Zoom?
Correct.
Then to approval of the minutes, we have the June 28th, 2023 public hearing and plan commission minutes.
I'll move for their approval.
Moved by Joe for approval. Is there a second?
Second down here.
Second by Sean. All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carried 4-0. I was not here for that one, so I'm not gonna vote on those. And then we have the August 23rd, 2023 public hearing and plan commission minutes.
I'll move for their approval.
There's a second?
I'll second.
Second by Brian. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 5-0. All right, item 4, correspondence. A, we have the legal opinion regarding 2023 Act 12. Macy.
Yes, you all received our personal and confidential letter setting forth the numerous issues, at least in outline form, that are located in 2023 Act 12. We'll be following up with the village board with a more detailed letter on referendums, because we've received numerous questions on the new law regarding referendums. But of significance to the plan commission, of course, is the changes to the law as it relates to quarrying and blasting it, and nothing we can do about, but educate you as to what the law is. I would think that it's not probably good use of time tonight, since many of you may have not had a chance to study it. I would ask that if you wish to have further discussion on this, you contact the clerk and we'll place it as a follow-up agenda. Nobody has any questions and nobody contacts her, we won't put it back on the agenda. But if somebody wishes to have further, extensive discussion, we'll probably put it at the end of an agenda, a meeting, and we can talk about it. Fair enough?
Now, there was, when I skimmed through it, and maybe you can assist with here, it had to do with shutdown in health for business. It's on page 9. What is different from what was prior to what this Act 12 carried? Having 30-day shutdown, et cetera. What's the difference?
John, we can't fully hear you.
Okay, on page 9, when I skimmed it through, what did Act 12 magnify or clarify in the section of business closures to control communicable disease outbreaks?
I don't have I don't have the bill in front of me, so we can put that on the list and I can, business closings to control.
This is a lot beyond our purview, but but
Check it to the plan commission.
All I know is what it says on here is that, you know, there was a general law and they've made it more specific. Saying that they can't close a business for more than 30 days to control the outbreak or epidemic.
or a 130-day extension, so a total of 60, then.
So there was a landmark, somewhat landmark case that came down that upheld the health officer's authority, and this is limiting the health officer's authority. That's my best advice. I mean, I'm very familiar with the case, because everybody in the state was watching to see whether the Supreme Court was going to say that what the health officers did was allowed under the law, and they basically said, yes, they were. So this is the legislative's attempt to narrow that jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you. Just seeing 30 and 30 is like, whoa, so.
Well, it was unlimited in the past.
Understood. Okay.
So with that direction, please let the clerk know if there are other, we can try to go through it, but we have people waiting and I hesitate to use the time wisely. It was put on, I'm sorry, is it A or 1? A was put on because of B and C. To be perfectly honest with you, B and C wouldn't have made any sense if we hadn't put A on. Fair enough?
Yes.
And I'm just gonna state this under this, as I'm gonna state every time, I think this was a complete abuse of power by the Wisconsin State Legislature. This is absolutely horrible, what this is doing to our local municipalities. And I know we have some good quarries, and I'm not trying to openly rip on them. It does not mean they're always going to be good. And what they have done here is absolutely atrocious. It removes all control from local municipalities, and they should be completely ashamed of what they did. I know it was lobbyists, but you know what? It's ridiculous. I hope whoever sponsored this bill, they find a way to vote out. Anyway, anything else?
Couldn't agree with you more.
Likewise.
Item B then is clerk memo regarding 2023 Act 12 notification procedure.
So this is something that, when we had our monthly staff meeting, regarding the request from Lafarge Wholesome, which we'll get to momentarily under item C. This is what we determined at the staff meeting to be the best way to convey the process that Lisbon will take moving forward due to Act 12. And so we have a very brief summary of what the process is going to be. And that's what this is.
And we're subject to criticism, comments, concerns about the process. We dreamed it up at the staff meeting. We used as two examples of past practice that we thought were applicable. One is the review of a minor modification of a tower. They're required under the law to submit an application. That application is reviewed by staff within a very specific timetable. And then this community, we bring them, I believe, to the village board for
Determination,
for determination to accept the staff recommendation as to whether it's a minor modification. If it's not a minor modification, they just start going through the process that they have to go through. But we put that procedure together based on that law, and we're sort of trying to mirror to a certain extent. The modification to it is under this law, under the tower law, they're required to file the application. The staff is required to review it. So we believe the application fee and the professional fee ordinance applies. Under this law, they have the absolute right to do it. So you say, well, why are we making them come in at all? Well, when they start operating outside of hours that are approved in their CU, someone's going to call the police. And the police is going to go and do an investigation, and the police are going to come back and say, yes, they were operating. And then Kathy's going to have to say, well, you know, or contact them, and then they'll say, yes, but the new law, Act 12, allows us to do this. we think that that can all be circumvented by going through this process. And that's, you know, and that's why we're recommending, so that it's in the record. I have one community then when it comes to home occupations, they had a lot of they have a very broad home occupation ordinance, and when someone has a sort of a unique but allowed home occupation, they file for a determination with the plan commission, and we get it into the minutes that they are operating legally as a home occupation. So when the police get called, they say there's a lot of traffic at this house, what's going on here? The police have a record that they haven't approved, and it also gives us an opportunity to warn the people that what the requirements are of the home occupation. I have only one community that did that, I don't even know, they don't seem to do it as much anymore, but it was very successful for, you know, when the staff got calls, we knew that there was a legal allowable, we didn't approve it, we just put them on notice of what the rules were. And we put it in the minutes that home occupation. So it was those two examples I explained to the staff, and they dreamed up this procedure. We dreamed up as a staff to propose to you this procedure, and we're looking for comments, questions, or concerns regarding the same.
I think this is fine. It's nice and concise. It's direct to the point, and it provides a record going forward. And hopefully, my only question is, can quarries request, can they claim exemption carte blanche going forward, or do they have to do it for every instance?
How would we know if it's a road project? Then somebody could be hauling out, you know, for somebody's driveway or for a different project. The idea that this exemption was put in place for these night hours for road projects. So this helps us understand that they have a road project they're working on. And it's
So-
just notification, no
So
cost
it's
to them,
every
just
project, they're
paperwork.
gonna have to request the exemption.
every time they're going, yeah, if they had two contracts that are gonna go back to back, it wouldn't make any difference. But
They
if
don't have
they,
to request anything.
they're just notifying us, that's all they're doing. They're not
But
coming
I just
forward.
want to make sure that whether or not it's going to be on a project basis, or can they notify the village of, they believe that they're exempt under the terms of the legislation. Well, having to do this, a quarry may have 20 of these in a year.
Right,
Well, I
if
think
they
the
were-
staff did not see any problem that they could apply for all 20. But remember, the planner's checking to make sure they meet their requirements, and we have experts probably who know this law better than I do, certainly in the audience. This isn't every quarry. They have to meet certain requirements in order to fall under this provision. We've not even done an analysis of whether all of our quarries apply or don't apply. The law applies to all of our quarries or not, but
Okay.
it does say certain quarries and certain parameters. So that's the kind of thing that the staff would be checking. But to your question, if they have 8 contracts, they can bring them all, they can make their filing on all 8 at the one time and put us
Yeah.
on notice.
Yeah, but the problem is that with the bidding schedule and everything else, it may be 8 different times. I was trying to make this even simpler, say that we believe that we're exempt under legislation for this type of work, and that's the end of it.
No, we
But
want to,
apparently not. It's
You
got-
can do that, but we don't think that tells the neighbor when this
Right.
might be happening.
Okay,
The
that's
whole
fine.
purpose is to help our staff and our
Okay.
police deal with complaints.
Okay,
Yeah.
And
That's
at the end of the day, it's gonna help them,
No,
the quarry.
oh, well,
Because
I
if
think
we're the
so. I
one, we
mean,
can put it to bed.
I don't know if people are here on number C, but in talking to their attorney, they thought this was a fair compromise.
Yeah, I mean, it helps them in a way instead of having this blow up into something else, it can be explained at the local level. Well, we may not like the way the rule's done. We get good quarries right now. We do. I'm not-
I don't have any problem with that. I was trying to make it even more simple, but apparently I understand the reason to do it on a project by project basis, and I'm fine with that. I think this is fine what staff has come up with.
Don?
Looking at the skimming is, Does anybody have any, feeling, since we are probably seeing an increase in off hours of communicating with affected communities, let's say on Hillside Road for Holston, how we communicate, oh, and by the way, you may be seeing trucks going up there at midnight or down back and forth. Is there a way to communicate that to the neighborhoods on like, no, that's,
Well, we could do something on our website if we wanted to bring it to the notices, our notice portion of the website.
and I'm just trying to facilitate, so we're not, everybody else with calling police and everything, that at least we have. Here's what happened, here's where it is, this is what's allowed.
Yeah, when
so-
we get notice, we'll put the note, we could put that notice out. So somebody can say what's going on at such and such quarry at night, they can look. But will they? They'll call first.
I know, I'm just,
It might be
Besides-
nice to have.
in an
something on
ideal
there
world.
that could
Yeah.
Say, hey, this is where it's noticed that we,
Mhm.
and people they'll get used to it and they start looking.
this second question I do have, living on Hillside. Is there anything that we have in this ordinance that we can at least highly recommend, or saying that exit routes are certain ways instead of going, if it's going for this 43 project on 43, I prefer it that it go out by Q and County line than going all the way down Hillside to Good Hope and exiting that way. Is there any way to say we highly recommend egress to County line versus egress down to Good Hope?
Certainly can make that request. And as you said, as the chairman has said, president, I apologize. On several occasions, I'll put my.
I'm the
quarter in.
chairman here.
I'll put,
I know that's what gets me
Okay.
too. Yeah.
Is
you're
this
the
your
chair.
first rodeo?
Yeah, I was gonna say, how many years?
The reason,
We certainly can make that, and as he's indicated, whoever he is, has indicated that we have great quarry operators here, and they generally cooperate and work with the village.
We do have things in place
Absolutely.
already over on Hillside too, where they're supposed to go north. They're not supposed to be going trucking south on Hillside.
every once or twice, people get discombobulated. But I was just saying, I'm just trying to do it to facilitate I don't want the pain or the discomfort of us having to communicate, yes, they are blasting or they are working at night. Day after day, at least that we have some procedure that can be proactive to, number one, try to get the word out to affected community or affected people. And number two, at least to facilitate. I know that they know the egress is that way, but just in the future, how to facilitate all of this.
I'm fine.
I think this is good work. I like it. Anything else from staff?
Not on B.
Item C. The fire Holcomb notification regarding temporary hours for exempt short-term road contract.
Well, we got our first request. They, I believe they filed lots of information as a courtesy, and they've indicated that, and I've received several courtesy calls from their council. Asking, they in part wanted to make sure we were aware of the new law. I had received courtesy calls from others indicating this also, not only that it was coming, but after it was passed. So we knew about it. They weren't required to do what they did, but they did, and it sort of sets a nice model for going forward of the type of information we'd be looking for in order to, we are not requesting that any action be taken. This is just given as a courtesy because we can't get into it. We can make comments for the minutes, to the administrator to say, please work with them on a route, and we'd like, you could make your comments, but we're not looking for action because it's something they have a right to, and I don't want to get into approval or not approval or conditions or not conditions when it's something they have the right to. So, to the best of our knowledge, as a staff of looking at it, it was something they met the requirement and they had the right to do it. So we're bringing it here just for informational purposes.
I think they did a great job.
Thank you. Very proactive.
Anything else? We're gonna move on then to item 5, new business. A. Discussion necessary action, request by applicants Joseph and Shannon Naruski for amendments to the Lisbon zoning code, in particular not limited to section 4 parent A, 16.A.I. We had pet grooming as an example of a limited family business or service-oriented business and recommendation to the village board of the same. We had a public hearing. Their discussion. Talked about adding the pet grooming. We did talk about adding a definition of pet grooming to our code. Other than that, does anyone wish to make a motion on this item, I guess? Can't stretch that one out anymore.
I'll make a motion that we add an amendment to the Lisbon zoning code. In particular, but not limited to section 4. Subpart H 16.A.I. Or 1, sorry. To add pet grooming as an example of a limited family business. And recommendation to the village board of the same.
I'll second.
There's a second, all right. Including everything that was discussed tonight.
Yes.
Second's okay with that?
Yes, I am.
All right, any other discussion? It's getting out everybody at once, but yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item B, discussion necessary action on the request by applicants Paul and Nancy Mullen for a conditional use permit to allow major grading activities in the A10 agricultural zoning district on property located at North 58 West 26215 Mountain Shadows Drive, LSPT 0260.999.004. All right, obviously this one was probably the longest conditional use for a grading in the history of Lisbon. Discussion. So we have discussion here on timeframes. We have discussion on which roads to use, weight limits, videotaping the roads. Obviously, we have some conditions in the staff review also.
Putting the property owners on notice that this does not automatically give them the right to put a single family home on there.
So
staff can write up the additional conditions.
as far as which roads to use, I mean, could we just have the staff identify the proper? The DPW director and staff identify which roads to use?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So I've got, as the second added condition from the plan commission, the haul route, designated by Director of Public Works and Village Engineer. Be restricted to one street and monitored by the village.
Well, one route. I mean,
One, we'll
yeah,
correct that to one route.
Route.
Cause I think we've noted that
We
there would be
gotta have at
possibly
least
three, so. Okay,
We got the Hall Road survey on there, on the list, right, Warren? And then a provision of requiring a road bond.
yep, I've got, haul route shall be videotaped before, and after the project, road bond to protect the village in an amount to be set by the Director of Public Works and Village Engineer.
Hours of operation we have on there.
Well, I've got that the petitioner shall comply with village load limits and then hours of operation, which staff is going to look into. But there was an open-ended question of, we haven't done this before. Do we want to do this for this project?
I thought the idea was that we didn't want to start the precedent of putting hours on conditional use permits on when trucks can come down roads. Other than the spring thaw, of course.
Joe.
I don't have. The buses go in there 3 times a day. And actually, it's more than that because, and if you start ending all when the buses operate in that subdivision or any subdivision, it's probably at least 5 or 6 bus type, and you end up with no time. You've got the grade school and you got Arrowhead and you got the late buses and you got the kindergarten and everything else. Pretty soon, if you restrict it to, you can't operate when the buses are running, they're gonna be running. It doesn't make any sense. So
restriction.
I don't have any issue with not requiring hours of operation.
Okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, everybody's all right.
The only other thing that I thought that we had discussed was limiting the length of this project and cut it off like March 31st or April 1st or something, which it seemed to me the petitioner was amenable to, because come March, they're not gonna be able to do anything after that because of load limits. And if he wants to start digging a hole for his new house this spring, it's gonna come after that. So he's gotta get it done.
But do you want to limit them? I mean, we're already limiting it then to the end of the year. If something happens where they just aren't getting the dirt in between now and the snow flying or the freeze, and then the thaw, they can't do anything, and now we're in April, May, June when they're getting it because they just,
It's better if they run in the winter. It's better for the roads. It's better, I mean, the ground's frozen.
but you have to have the sites that are breaking for frost at that time.
This, I don't think this is just not that much material. They get somebody who's doing a subdivision or doing a grading project, they can get this stuff in there. That's my feeling. I just want to get this in and out and get it done. I don't want them putting a sign up, handwritten, and somebody at the corner of their thing saying free clean fill wanted. And then all of a sudden they get a truckload today and one in 2 weeks. I mean, because it's cheaper. That's what I'm trying to eliminate.
They can't do that. So
Why can't they
I-
do that?
why can't they put up a sign that says free?
Because this
fill
thing will
wanted?
never get done.
But we're limiting them to 1 year to get it done.
Typically, we would give a year on something like this, correct?
Yes.
And on that point, we can add that, you know, subject to weight limitations, things like that. Maybe we don't need the section now that says if they apply for a new one. If they apply for an extension, we just say they can't apply for an extension. It's good for a year. They can apply for a new one.
Right.
And whatever terms and conditions, that addresses your concern.
I think I'd be in support of that, just saying this is a CU for 1 year and it terminates after.
Remove
1 year.
4. Remove number 4.
Strike 4
Anything that talks about an extension.
and condition 3 actually gives them to, it's over a year because it gives them till December 31st, 2024.
Let's give them a year like we normally would. Is everybody, would you be okay with that?
Sooner they can get it done, the better. So if we can just say 1 year and then that would give them till October 1st of,
This would remove. the
actually
possibility
November
of-
1st. By the
This-
time get this done, it'll be.
This would
November.
remove the possibility of an extension is what
Right.
we do. So you have 1 year from the date of the issuance of CU.
Right, fine. That'd get them done by November.
There's no, if they want to do it again, they gotta start a whole new process, which they're not gonna want to do. Are you
Okay with that, Brian? You're gonna have to live with this. You and Joe.
No, I think a year is fine because,
3 and 4.
let's say it expires after a year. Once they apply for their building permit, they're exempt anyway.
But that's what I was gonna ask you, is if they apply for a building permit, that
Yeah.
pretty much removes all this
Then
anyway.
they're exempt, yeah.
Right.
So if they can't get it done in a year and they're gonna go, well, we have everything else in place and they're approved for a building permit, then they're exempt from, major grading. I'm good with a year.
Becky,
I'm good with a year.
John,
You're fine. Everybody agrees, sooner the better.
anything else we need to address?
Staff knows what we.
Yes, one thing is I always ask that there be one person who's going to sign off and approve this, once the staff has finished their work on it. There's a lot of staff fingers all over this thing. I don't care if it's the chairman and president, I don't care if it's Mr. Everly. Sometimes we touch him
Yeah.
because he makes a lot of the comments. I don't care if it's the administrator, but I do prefer to have one of the policymakers. So that because all the staff will be working on it, you're at some point. So I would say the motion would be to approve the conditional use permit and direct staff to prepare the same pursuant to the discussions held at the public hearing and at the meeting. And that someone, you know, a certain named person is authorized to approve the final language of this.
Anyone like to make that motion with a name?
You can say so moved with the name.
Right.
So move its name.
You
That's,
gotta name somebody. Could be me, Sean, it could be Typically, they make it me.
Okay, anybody want to step up?
Say, Chairman also.
Okay,
Yeah.
Chairman Osterman?
Yeah.
So,
He's the tallest one on the bench here.
Is there a second to that motion?
the Air Force never volunteered.
Second,
All right, moved by Sean, seconded by Joe. Any other discussion? Anything else from staff?
Nope.
All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, item C. Discussion necessary action request by applicant Hans Dawson Sussex Quarry LSP LLC to amend the area of the existing conditional use permit for the quarry in the Q1 quarrying zoning district to include the property located at North 52 West 23096 Lisbon Road and identified as tax key LSPT 0286.999.007 and LSPT 0286.999.008. All right, as I stated, this is pretty much a housekeeping item.
I only have one little bitty question. I promise. If that's possible. Is the staff confident that what we're requiring under this is legit under the new legislation? That's the only question I have, so we don't have to redo this.
Okay, so this is just allowing their current, the two parcels that we brought in from Sussex
Right.
to be part. Yes,
Okay,
this is fine.
that's the only concern I have. Otherwise, I'll move for this adoption. That's appropriate. Get this done.
Motion,
Yes.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Brian. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item D, discussion necessary action request by applicant Hans Dawson Sussex Quarry LSP LLC to amend the area of the existing site plan of operation for land and stone products to construct a new storage building in the West Quarry location and to include the properties located at North 52 West 23096 Lisbon Road, and identified as tax key LSPT 0286.999.007 and LSPT 0286.999.008. Lauren?
Bringing up the property here on the screen. Go. All right, so the petitioner and property owner are requesting approval of the site plan, plan of operation to amend it for the construction of an approximately 8,520 square foot loader barn in the quarry pit at Land and Stone Products Sussex West Quarry. I've got the particular parcel that this would be on the screen highlighted. Essentially, there's already equipment being parked outdoors there. They'd like it to be protected from the elements and put into a pole building type structure with some bays for that equipment to be parked with overhead doors. The property is zoned Q1. Again, these would be down in the pit, so you wouldn't actually see this building from the public right of way. But it would provide a benefit to them. That's really the only change that they're requesting. So we've got some boilerplate conditions in the staff review, basically stating that we're limiting the approval to what's being requested. And it's going to be subject to the information and plans presented to the Plan Commission this evening. And then our typical boilerplate site plan of operation conditions.
Discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve with planner's comments as presented. That is a big building.
Is there a second?
Oh, second, yes, that is humongous building.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Becky. Discussion? Any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
It's gonna be too small to do.
I want to see those trusses.
Yeah.
This is not Joe Farmer's pole barn. Of course, you got some pretty good size.
Item 6 is unfinished business. A discussion regarding annual reports resulting from quarry inspections. We had Land and Stone Products with Commissioner Moshe, who is not here tonight. So
I haven't even received it from him.
we'll put that on the next agenda item. Item 7, planner report.
Nothing further to report at this time.
That is the right answer. That's called a veteran answer right there. Item 8, adjournment. Moved by Joe, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Sean, no discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, you're out at 8:16.